Yes.
Okay. So after this, were you involved with some overhears, again, what I talked about before break, where the defendant and Robert Baker are recorded surreptitiously, meaning they don't know they're being recorded or they shouldn't know, and they're in the lockup areas. Did you listen to overhears, what we call overhears of those recordings?
Yes, I set them all up and I listened to all of them.
About how many hours did you listen to between the two defendants of all their times in the courtroom or the back of the court lockup area having communications?
I think we did it 6 times. I would guess 15, 20 hours, maybe more.
During any of those, did you hear them first talk about Viber?
Yes.
And what specifically, if you recall?
They were whispering, and Monica was communicating to Robert that she was scared if they found her Viber and that it would be over.
What about Payless video? Or Payless shoes, I'm sorry, the video at Payless shoes.
Correct. Again, it was Monica talking to Baker, informing him that there was no video at the Payless shoe stores because it deleted in 30 days.
Now, prior to this, had you ever talked about trying to get a video at Payless shoes with the defendant when you met with her on May 18th, 2017?
No.
And then, what about any conversations between them that you overheard regarding phones or tablets or anything of that nature, digital computers?
Yes, they were talking back and forth, whispering again, and Monica was inquiring if the device and computer was gone, and he said gone. She said gone, gone. He says gone. Words to that effect.
Okay. Now, during any of these multiple hours of overhears that you listened to, did you also hear, as you refer to, a lot of whispering?
Yes, it was. I would describe it as you had a lot of whispering, and then normal talk, which anyway, yes, normal volume talk with a lot of whispering in between.
Unlike the black and white patrol vehicle, though, could you pick up some of the whisperings or a majority of the whisperings in these cell locations?
The majority of it, yes.
Did you ever hear, in all these hours and all these multiple operations, the defendant ever say to Rob Baker anything of the nature of, oh my gosh, did you kill the father of my children?
Never.
All right. Along the same lines, were you involved or did you participate in the booking of evidence that was collected from what was referred to, the jury already heard the term kites?
Yes.
And
Yes.
just briefly, what is a kite?
A kite is a letter or correspondence that's folded up and it's sort of in the configuration of a kite, and they pass it from one inmate to another.
You're going to have 11 pages. I may mark this as People's 182. The first page is evidence collected from bottom of 9th, 10th floor lockup. It's a photograph, color copy of a manila envelope.
So much.
And on October 3rd, are you familiar with some evidence or contraband or kites that were recovered in this courthouse between the 9th and the 10th floor?
I got to check on relevance grounds and no foundation in regarding.
Oh, really? Yes.
You aren't part of the collection of the evidence, correct?
No, well, they collected it from this courthouse and took it and booked it.
All right, so let me be more specific.
I'm going to object if he did not collect it from the scene.
That was testified to yesterday. Totally.
Showing 182. I'm using these photographs.
This screen's not on. There's a better right there, your question. In the body text. Nothing on the side. There's something said. A power button? Yeah, hold on. Here we go. On me.
182. Is this an envelope evidence? Evidence envelope?
Yes, we should.
All right. And then page 2. Are you familiar with this area?
I'm familiar with the photographs and the general area.
Okay, and these are items that were recovered between the 9th and the 10th floor?
By the sheriff.
All right, and I'm just gonna go through this quickly. Page 3, again, same evidence.
Yes.
And my question is, as I go through this,
There's no evidence that Ms. Sementilli ever received anything.
That was your first? Yeah. It's overruled.
Yeah.
okay, and page 4, do you recognize that?
Yes.
Page 5, do you recognize these pages here?
I do.
Copy of 2 different pages, and can you explain what that is?
I'm sorry, a copy of 2 different pages?
Yes.
Like what are the pages?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, okay. One appears to be just a puzzle. The one that says, "Help me find my way to the lake."
Okay.
And the other one is a coded message.
These particular items, we heard testimony on it. Did you then recover them from a deputy Baldwin and a Sergeant Weston?
Yes.
And then did you book these items? Were they given to you as the investigating officer and you booked them into evidence under the DR number associated with this case?
Correct.
Okay. This one letter on the right-hand side is a bunch of numbers. You viewed that when it was collected?
Yes.
Do those numbers, do you recognize them as some type of coding?
Correct.
Can you just explain what coding is and if you have a background in understanding what coding is?
Yes, I actually learned during this case, I broke a couple of these codes on these letters. Basically, this, I don't know what it's called, the title of it, but the way this code works is they use a base word, up to 9 letters. For example, one of them was beautiful. And you take that base word, and each letter on the word beautiful, you number 1 through 9. So the top line is one of the letters from the word beautiful, 1 through 9. You'll notice the top line always goes 1 through 9, if they're using a 9-letter word. The number below it is the number that you add to that. So if it's a B, 4, for example, I'm sorry, a 1-4, 1 represents B for beautiful. So you go to B and then you count 4, C, D, E, F, and that's the letter F. And sometimes they'll do it a negative, and then you just subtract. And that's how, but you have to know the base word to solve it.
In your experience, and is it a way of communicating sometimes, obviously not always, with people in custody to other people, whether it be on the outside or the inside, so that someone can't read what they're writing?
Yes, it's common to have different types of cryptic messages. This is just one of them.
Now, when you say you broke the code, just to be clear, you don't have a certification in coding or anything of that nature, correct?
No.
Is it fair that you made an attempt to understand what they were saying, but again, you're not certified to testify as an expert in coding?
Correct. I was just trying to break it myself.
Okay. And then going through the rest of the pages, just for page 6, another item you put into evidence just to complete the package. Same thing, another letter with coding on the right-hand side.
Yes.
And then a second evidence envelope containing, again, more evidence that was collected on that stairwell.
By the sheriff.
Okay? Page 9, more evidence.
Yes.
10, same thing that you saw.
Yes.
And 11.
Yes.
Okay, so you wrote all of this in those 2 envelopes that you saw.
Yes.
Okay, any more questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective Gable.
Good afternoon, sir.
You came on this case at what time?
I'm sorry?
You took over this case what day?
Early March, I think it was 7.
And what, March 7th?
2017. Yes.
2017. And at the time you came on this case, you already knew that Robert Baker had been matched, his DNA had matched the blood found in the semen in the car, correct?
Correct.
That match occurred on February 14, 2017, is that right?
That sounds right, yes.
Okay. And at that time you believe, sufficient probable cause to arrest Mr. Baker since his blood was all over the murder scene and in the board.
Correct.
Was it your decision not to arrest Mr. Baker at that time?
Yes, I had testified to that yesterday.
Yours alone?
No.
Who were the other detectives on the case at that time?
My partner and I discussed it.
Who's your partner?
Barry Tellis, Detective Barry Tellis.
Anyone else?
Yes. We ran it by our immediate supervisor, Lieutenant Ben Fernandez, and then we took it into the commanding officer, Billy Hayes, Captain Billy Hayes.
Now, Detective Parshall and Verna, were they on the case at that time?
We had already taken the case.
From them.
Yes. Well, we still have some to work with us on it, but it was our responsibility at that point.
They were the original detectives who were assigned to it.
Correct.
And you said that the reason, well, let me ask you this, the reason you decided not to arrest Mr. Baker is that you believed at that time that he was having an affair with Monica Sementilli, is that right?
No, that's not the reason.
All right. You were trying to find out who the second murderer was, correct?
The entire time.
Okay. And was that part of your assignment in this case, to find out the second murderer?
Yes. Yes, of course.
All right. And why didn't you approach Ms. Sementilli and ask her any questions about Mr. Baker once you learned that his DNA had been matched to the murder scene?
We felt that it was better to not inform them because we wanted them to behave in a natural manner as if the original investigation was still ongoing.
And when you say in a natural manner,
Yes.
this was about 2 weeks after the murder of Fabio Sementilli, correct?
What was 2 weeks after the murder?
That you made that decision
Let's
not
see,
to pursue
January 23rd, and we got it in March, so I'd say it's more like five weeks.
but the DNA match was on February 14th, 2017.
Oh, well, it wasn't our case at that time.
So,
I wasn't aware.
okay.
So, yeah.
So are you saying a decision was made between the time that you took over the case and February 17th, 2017, not to arrest Mr. Baker?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Someone had to have made a decision, correct, not to arrest Mr. Baker when his DNA was found all over the murder scene.
Correct. OVB Homicide, they independently made that decision. When we took over the case, we independently made that decision.
You independently reviewed that decision. It had already been
sorry.
made by someone else.
That had been, yeah, so we continued with that.
Okay. And again, the main reason you did that is because at that time, you were convinced that Monica Sementilli was having an affair with Robert Baker, correct?
Well, we knew she was having a secret affair with him, yes,
How did you know that?
based on the surveillance that GND did on them before we got the case.
So between February 14th and March, when did you come on? March
7th.
7th?
Yeah.
They had already been surveilling the defendant and Robert Baker, correct?
Yeah.
And they knew they were surreptitiously seeing each other.
Correct.
Did they have any evidence that they had been seeing each other dating back to 2016 or even 2015?
Only telephone communications at that point.
Okay. And based on those communications, it was at least your suspicion that they were having some kind of clandestine affair.
Yes. Oh, and also I believe the OVB Homicide did the Facebook warrant, and on that, Baker was communicating with, gosh, I forget his name, in Vegas, and he said that he had a girlfriend for a year, approximately a year. So that, based on that, they assumed it was going on for about a year.
Okay. So why didn't you arrest Mr. Baker and Mr. Sementilli at that time for the murder of Fabio Sementilli?
Well, I wanted to surveil them and watch their behavior. At the same time, I was also gathering information on Robert and Monica, building a case to see if there is a case with Monica. I wanted to determine, is Monica involved or is she not involved? Because post-murder behavior can tell you a lot of things. And so we wanted to monitor their behavior, what they said, and what they didn't say, all the way through to the point where I left the case in 2019.
Well, okay, but the arrest took place in 2017 in June, correct?
June.
So by that time, you believed you had probable cause to arrest both Baker and Monica Sementilli.
Absolutely, yes.
So, for the time between March when you came on until June when the arrests were made, your focus was on trying to find evidence that Monica Sementilli was not just having an affair, but was involved in the murder of her husband Fabio, correct?
That and try to identify the unknown suspect.
And how did you do that?
How did I do what?
Try to find the unknown suspect.
Oh gosh, we so much work on that. Let's see.
Just summarize it, if you would.
Okay, well, one was through surveillance, both digital and physical.
Surveillance of who or what?
Monica and Robert, in hopes that they would stop maybe over and visit the third person. So,
But at the same time, you were looking for evidence of their affair, correct?
yeah, both. You can do two things at once, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever think
My primary focus was they were both important focuses, but I was really trying to find the third person, and whatever else we got was good. But there was a strong effort to try and find the third person,
When did
which
the name
lasted for years.
I'm sorry, when did the name Christopher Austin come to your attention?
2 months ago,
2 months ago?
in the news.
All right,
Well,
so
actually, someone told me about it, and I looked it up on Google.
all right, so you had no role in his arrest,
None.
no role in a deal, shall we say, if in exchange for his testimony to obtain some leniency?
Not at all.
And during the time that you were on the case, you found no evidence connecting him to the murder of Fabio Sementilli.
No, that was the very good work of another detective,
Very good work of who?
Mitzi Roberts. She did a great job. We missed what she found.
And in other words, she did a great job by coming to the conclusion that Austin was involved 7 years after the murder. Is that correct?
Yes, she did a very good job.
And at any time did you believe that by confronting Mr. Baker and arresting him because of his DNA that he could help you find the second murderer?
It didn't seem probable.
You didn't think he would give up the second murderer in exchange for some kind of leniency or deal?
It didn't seem probable.
Why?
Well, you can kind of read some people, and my partner's thought was, this guy's not going to give it up. And we thought that the most probable person that would be able to, or I would say, give it up, would be the third person.
Or Monica Sementilli?
Possibly, but it seemed unlikely.
So it seemed unlikely that if you had arrested Monica Sementilli at that time and Robert Baker, that neither one of them would give up Christopher Austin? Is that what you're saying?
In June? No, we arrested him in June, both of them.
No, I understand, but I'm talking about in March when you came out.
No. I was working on the case. I was gathering information. I wanted to see if I could find information that would make me think, well, maybe she's not involved, maybe she is involved. And that involved collecting a lot of information, a lot of records, and working on the background and trying to figure that out.
But the truth is that your primary focus at that time, for the time that you were on the case until the arrest, was to come up with evidence that could establish that Monica Sementilli was in some way responsible for the murder of Fabio Sementilli, not just that she was having an affair with Robert Baker.
No, the affair was a minor factor. I mean, an affair all by itself, outside every aspect of this case, that's just an affair. And I
Doesn't
think
mean
that
she's
that's
a
just a
murderer.
civil matter. It's a civil matter. That's resolved by divorce or reconciliation. So by itself, an affair, it means nothing.
Right.
But when you find out that the person who murdered the girlfriend's husband is the boyfriend, then that raises a red flag.
Well, when I said affair, I was referring to an affair with Robert Baker. Obviously, if she had an affair with Joe Schmo, it wouldn't make any difference, correct?
Right, but my point is an affair all by itself, in general, is not a reason to do a police investigation. It's a civil matter.
All right, but an affair with the individual Robert Baker, whose DNA was found at the scene, in your mind, made her a primary suspect in the murder as well.
It was suspicious.
Okay, just because of the affair with Mr. Baker, correct?
Just because, yes, Mr. Baker murdered her husband, yes.
Okay, and during the next 4 months or 3 months that you were on the case, you enlisted a tremendous amount of resources, men, surveillance, time, and effort to try and establish whether or not Monica Sementilli was somehow involved not just in an affair,
but in the murder of her husband, correct?
That and equal amount of time looking for the third suspect.
Okay.
A lot of time on that.
Did you ever obtain evidence that Mr. Austin had flown down to Los Angeles on the weekend of the murder of Fabio Sementilli?
No, we missed that.
When you say you missed that, what do you mean you missed that?
So, all right, so what you're asking. So what we found is Baker has like compartmentalized friends. He's got army friends, he's got some prison friends, he's got his porn industry friends, and he's got his racquetball friends.
Can I stop you there for 1 second?
Oh.
I'm not check. The question was asked.
You did ask the question.
I did,
So-
and if you want to continue, fine.
Yes, please. So what we found is that he also uses multiple phones. So typically it's not so hard to find an unknown suspect. It takes sometimes some work, but typically you'll find him. But since he has these groups of people and these different phones, it became very hard to do what we call link analysis, to link him. A typical link analysis, it would spread out and you'd find this nice row because you have a phone and you probably had the same phone for a long time. So it's really easy to link all of your associates so it's an easy track to follow. But with Baker, with all the different phones and friends around the country and different aspects, it was very difficult to do a good link analysis. So then we determined, you know what, instead of going crazy all over the country, let's just go focus local first. So that's what we did. We went through all the call detail records that we were coming in. We went through all the phone numbers that we could come across, social media. We'd find, anyone that we thought could possibly be that person, we would investigate and we would look. And we could eliminate a lot of them because we knew there was a general height. So if we pulled someone up and the person was like 6'1", we're not even going to look at him because Rob's, I think, 5'7", and the other person was around the same size from the video. But we spent a lot of time looking for this guy. If the digital surveillance, for example, one time it went to a guy named Alfred Bergson's house where Baker went to Vegas. So we went out to that house, we did a search warrant on the house in hopes that maybe there was evidence in the house, that maybe Baker stashed it there. There was in the time when Monica's and Robert went to a house in North Hollywood. It turned out to be nothing, but we investigated it. We did that stuff all the time. I'm pretty good at finding people, but I totally missed it, and we didn't get it, and it's very frustrating being an investigator. And luckily, a new detective put a fresh set of eyes on it, and that's what it needed. It needed a fresh set of eyes to sit back and go, okay, look, what do we got here? And she did a great job.
7 years later.
Yeah, 7 years later. I'm glad she did it.
Now, obviously, and we are too. Let me ask you this. During that entire time, though, you were also investigating whether Monica Sementilli was involved in the murder as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And in
Absolutely,
fact,
yeah.
I'm sorry, isn't
Yes.
that true? And in
Very true.
fact, the only evidence you found during those 4 months that was any different, in fact, there was no evidence different than what you knew in February, and that is they were having a romantic affair. Isn't that true?
No, that's not true.
Well, let me ask you
Not
this.
accurate.
Let me ask you this. You know what a Ramey warrant is?
Yeah, it's a probable cause arrest warrant.
Okay. And a Ramey warrant is a warrant you seek from a judicial officer or district attorney's office that gives you the grounds or gives you the authority to go out and arrest somebody on a specific charge. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, you don't need a Ramey warrant to arrest somebody if you have sufficient evidence yourself, but it is another way of obtaining that authority. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you sought a Ramey warrant in this case early in June of 2017, correct?
I did.
And accompanying that, or before the Ramey warrant was issued, there was a search warrant issued, or was it attached to the Ramey warrant?
It was attached.
Okay. What did you do first, the search or the arrest of Baker and Monica Sementilli
Arrest and search.
at the same time?
Virtually. Arrest, then search.
Okay. And one of the things that you were looking for, you said in the Ramey warrant, what you were looking for was any evidence to connect Monica Sementilli to the murder of Fabio Sementilli, correct?
Yes.
And to that point, you had not found sufficient evidence to arrest her, correct?
Not at all. No, we had a signed probable cause search warrant. We had more than enough probable cause to arrest her.
Well,
And
why did you wait till June of 2017 then to do this?
I think we talked about that. I was building the case. I was gathering information.
I see. And in the meantime, the second murderer remained free, correct?
The second, the
Killer.
person.
And
Yeah,
Robert Baker remained free, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you said that you engaged in some kind of a evaluation on whether or not leaving Robert Baker, who you could have arrested in February, a known murderer of Fabio Sementilli with a knife, with another person,
Correct.
whether or not leaving him free on the streets was the wise thing to do, correct?
I thought it was prudent and it was, I don't know, wise is the right word, but I felt comfortable doing it.
Well, even though the truth is he could have injured others, he could have killed Monica, in fact, if he wanted to get rid of her if she was involved, correct?
Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Yes.
Was he under constant surveillance during those 4 months?
Constant digital and occasional physical.
Okay. And was Monica under constant surveillance during those 4 months?
Constant digital and occasional physical, yes.
And during that entire time, you had people trailing them, correct?
Occasional.
Surveilling them?
The surveillance was digital, meaning there's a tracker on the cars and the phones were being pinged. That was constant.
And
Occasional was physical surveillance.
okay, and the tracking and the pings, that was designed to obtain what kind of evidence? That
Well,
would-
for example, when I mentioned Alfred Birdsong in Vegas, we knew that Bob Baker drove to Alfred Birdsong's house, so we researched that house, and then we ended up going to talk to him. We did a search warrant on that house to see if perhaps that's where he's stashing any evidence, if he still had any.
Okay.
That's an example.
And what evidence did you obtain from this surveillance that connected Monica Sementilli to the murder?
Through the digital or the surveillance? At
The
that
actual
point,
surveillance.
At that point, the surveillance portion of it only confirmed that the romantic relationship was ongoing.
All right. So after 4 months, you confirmed what you knew 4 months earlier, that they were involved in a romantic relationship.
Well, it's important to know if it's continuing. Is she because she just lost her husband and the father of her children? Is she spending more time with her children, or is she spending more time with her boyfriend?
How about, how does
Well,
that?
that's-
How does that provide you with evidence of whether or not she was involved in the murder, if whether she was not being a good mother after the murder of her husband?
It's all about, we call it post-murder behavior. So, after a murder, something like this, and post-murder behavior, it's based on Fitz general common sense, everyday stuff. We know everyone acts differently when they grieve, or they act differently in joyous times, but there's a general common sense baseline. So post-murder behavior just doesn't include actually physically, like going to a bar and dating. It's lots of things. It's like, it's what they say, what they don't say, and then you have to ask yourself, okay, for example, let's suppose a person had their husband murdered, and in their house, let's say, and there was 2 young girls in that house. Would you spend more time at that house to be with your children and maybe upgrade your security system, or even maybe move out? Or would you spend most of your time with your boyfriend? So you have to just ask yourself with the common sense, okay, and then you have to weigh those things. And that's just one example.
Could I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
So you're talking about, in this case, evidence of whether or not, in your opinion, Monica Sementilli was a good mother to her children following the murder of her husband. That's one of the factors.
That's just a slice of it.
A slice of it. Okay.
Yes.
And the other things that you were going to discuss, I assume, you engaged in that activity for 4 months, right?
Was it 4 months? March, April, May, June? Yeah, March, April.
February,
Yeah,
March,
3 months.
April, May, into June, correct?
Right,
The murder
correct.
was January 17th, and the arrest was June when?
Yeah, so from March until June, yes.
Okay, and whatever occurred before that.
I wasn't involved in the case then. But
Okay, okay, but they had made the same decision, which was not to arrest Robert Baker.
Oh, hello.
They had made the same decision not to arrest Robert Baker or Monica Sementilli by the time you came on the case.
They did.
And you reviewed the whole case.
I did.
All right. And you met with Monica Sementilli many times after you came on the case, either by phone or in person, correct?
No. I
How
met her
many
one time.
How many interviews? One interview?
One.
How many other interviews were conducted by other officers, as far as you know, before you came on?
With Monica?
Yes.
I have no idea. Aside from Detective Parcell and Berna, I have no idea.
You didn't review those?
I don't recall. I
Interviews?
don't think it was many. I think Parcell and Berna were the main two.
All right. And during that time, in essence, you and the other officers lied to her about the state of the investigation, correct?
Yes, we did.
And every time you met with her and she asked you how things were going, did you find the murder of my husband, what's happening with the case, you lied to her.
Well, you said every time. I only met her once.
Only once you spoke to her about that?
Yes, I had one meeting with her before
What
the
about
arrest.
on the phone?
I never spoke to her on the phone, ever.
Were you aware of her contacting LAPD often during
I was
the
aware of
period?
it, yes.
All right. How were you aware of that?
Through Detective Parcell.
All right. And who was she getting in touch with for the most part?
Detective Parcell.
And I believe someone said that she had a better relationship with Detective Parshall than others, correct?
She did. It appears so.
And was Detective Parshall instructed every time she called to, in essence, tell her, well, we're making progress, we're almost there, but not quite,
Yes.
correct? And the other things he was instructed to say is, well, the DNA came back, but it only matches Fabio Sementilli, and it doesn't match anyone else, but we're getting there.
Yes.
So for 4 months, LAPD, robbery homicide, lied to Monica Sementilli every time they spoke with her about the progress of the case of the investigation of the murder of her husband. Isn't that right?
Regarding that, yes, you're correct.
Regarding that.
Regarding, yeah, the DNA, yes.
Well, and regarding the whole investigation, correct?
Yes, when we took over the case, we told OVB Homicide to continue with the investigation as they were doing with Monica. And yes, I let her believe that it's still being investigated as a burglary gone bad. That is correct. That was.
And it was also holding up the payment of any insurance proceeds that Fabio Sementilli had paid for when he was at Procter & Gamble, correct?
No, that was inconsequential because we were investigating to see if she was involved.
Well,
So regardless, she wouldn't have gotten the insurance.
Well, because the insurance company contacted LAPD and wanted to know if the parties who were the beneficiaries had any involvement in the murder of Fabio Sementilli, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And you also held up the payment of insurance to Jessica and Isabella Sementilli. Isn't that correct?
Well, the details on that you'd have. Well, he's no longer with us, but I never had any contact with the insurance company ever.
Oh,
That
you're
was
talking
all-
about. I'm sorry, Parshall was not on the case at that time. He passed away for reasons unrelated to the case.
Correct.
Okay, but it was certainly the policy of LAPD at that time not to allow for any of the proceeds of the insurance policy to be given to the beneficiaries, whoever they were. In other words, to confirm with the insurance company that some, if not all, of the beneficiaries were not involved in the murder and therefore should be provided the benefit of the policy.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact policy is, but that sounds about right.
And can you tell me why it was that LAPD would not allow the proceeds of the insurance to be paid to Jessica and Isabella, the minor children of Fabio?
I don't even know if that is an LAPD policy. It might be an insurance policy. It's an insurance company policy. And like I said, I didn't involve myself in any of that. That was, I told Parcell just keep handling that, and he handled it. So
He did not inform you of what was going on as far as that was concerned?
I knew what was going on, but what I'm saying is I don't know whose policy is what. Is it LAPD's policy? Is it the insurance policy? I don't know.
Well, okay, the insurance
But I
policy.
knew what was going on. I'm not, you know.
Right, and you could have stopped that and had the funds paid to Jessica and Isabella.
I don't know.
And
I don't know
Luigi?
what the insurance policy is on the kids getting money and Monica not getting the money.
You
I
knew
don't
nothing
know.
about that.
No, I don't. And to this day, I don't.
Well, did Tellis, your partner, know anything about that?
No,
Did Parshall know anything about that?
I don't know. I didn't ask him. He was handling it.
When you went to the house, you said you had one interview of Monica Sementilli in May. Is that correct?
May, I believe it was, yes.
And we heard the tape recording, I believe, of that interview. Correct?
Correct.
Remember that?
I do.
And you lied to her throughout that interview. Correct?
Yes, I used the ruse that we were the knock-knock bandit task force.
And designed to calm any fear she had that maybe the house wasn't safe, because she said knock-knock burglars, especially if there's a murder involved, rarely come back to the scene of the murder. Correct?
No, that's not why we did the ruse.
No, but that was one of the things you told her. Isn't that right?
Say that again? I didn't.
That knock-knock burglars rarely return to the scene of the burglary if it involved a murder, as in this case, for obvious reasons.
Well, yes, I don't remember saying that. I may have, but yes, that is true. It's pretty rare that a burglar will come back to a scene where they
Okay,
place.
so in reality, you didn't believe that they were in any real danger, correct?
No, because Baker was our guy.
Okay, and the second guy?
That's who I was looking for.
But they were in no danger of him as well, is what you're saying.
No, because it was very obvious that the target was very specific. The target was taken out, and it was accomplished what needed to be done.
So, Austin, you believe the second murder, his intent was to take out the target?
I'm sorry, Austin?
Yeah.
I've never spoken to Austin.
Well, you knew that Baker was one of the murderers, correct?
Yes, he was.
All right. And he's the one who was having the affair with Monica Sementilli, right?
Correct.
So what was your theory about the second murderer?
My theory would be if Baker wasn't there, that third person would not be there because that third person's there to help Baker.
Okay. So,
We're going to take our afternoon adjournment until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. As always, the evidence still applies. We're going to discuss this case with anyone like yourselves or with anyone else with more discussing opinions of the cause tonight's submitted to. Have a good evening. See you around 9.